You do whatever you want. It's your house. No, leave your pants on. Come on.
Oh, man. So, do you have an agenda of stuff you want to talk about this time? Because I sure do.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
It's not what you think either.
How do you know what I think? How dare you? How dare you? The audacity. Yeah, no, there's a
More than
lot
obvious.
going on.
Yes. And
But
I
my wife-
refuse to talk about any of it.
My wife did indicate this was going to be a boring episode to listen to.
She thought it would be?
Oh, yeah.
Well, because
of,
that's all we would be talking about?
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Nazis and
Not interested.
51st and
Not even remotely interested.
I have one question for you because you're old and you'll know the answer.
Sure.
I don't remember. I know I remembered learning it. But why are there limitations between trades between provinces?
I have no idea
Right.
why.
Yeah, and they're long-standing.
I mean, they're obviously protectionist to, preserve the viability of certain businesses, but
Yeah, right. Like,
people are talking about them like they're nonsensical and really should be gotten rid of. But
apparently today they dropped about half of them.
really,
Yeah, I read it. And when I say I read it, I read a headline. I'm that kind of news reader.
mm-hmm.
And that's what prompted the question is like, why did they exist? Like, I could guess why maybe,
Mm-hmm.
like, to preserve the business or preserve the export cost. Like the value of
Yeah,
it
like,
when
I
they
mean-
export a product.
Well, and I mean, like
Like
I don't know
steel.
if this has anything to do with interprovincial tariffs, but I know, for example, either Alberta doesn't want you importing BC wine for yourself, or BC doesn't want you taking their wine to Alberta.
Yeah, I don't
for
remember what it was.
yourself.
There was something though, wasn't
It's
there?
probably Alberta complaining about it because, I mean, BC wouldn't lose anything by you going there and bringing wine to your home.
Other than valuing creating a false scarcity, valuing the product, you have to come here to enjoy it.
Yeah, but you don't, because you can buy it in any local store, but it's more fun to go to the winery and, drink some of it and maybe stay there and have some food and act like you actually
You mean like,
know
well,
stuff
in
about
BC?
wine. Yeah.
No. But what I'm saying is that because I remember this, and I remember having this conversation when I lived there,
Right.
like right when we got there, which is about 10 years ago now, so
Right.
a little foggy.
Apparently it's verboten to bring
Yeah,
BC wine and just put it in your car and bring it home.
because they want to preserve the product in British Columbia. For you to enjoy their product, they want you to come there and enjoy the product. Even if you can go to the store and buy it and then go
Here.
No, there. They want you to go to BC,
Yeah.
spend money in BC.
Oh, yeah.
You know
but
what I mean?
I don't know if that's what the deal is, though. I think it has to do with the fact that there is a livelihood to be gained by allowing the wine seller that if another province wants your wine, you get to deal with the province's liquor people directly, and the residents of that province have to buy it from the official retailer. So bypassing that middleman is something the province wouldn't want. I think that's what it has
Oh
to
yeah,
do
you
with.
might be right. Yeah, that
That would be my guess.
Yeah, that's plausible as well.
Because I mean, fuck, if I owned a winery, I'd be like, oh, you want to take some wine home to fucking Alberta? Here, how many cases do you want?
Right.
And tell your friends, we're open for business.
Right.
No, I don't. I mean, all trade barriers are erected to protect a system. And I mean, like I've been quite disenfranchised by the whole trade barrier and tariff and duty thing ever since I met Darlene and started buying things for the home, started realizing that, you could buy a Canadian product, but if you wanted the superior American product, you had to pay through the nose to get it because there were duties placed upon that product to try to encourage you to buy Canadian.
Right.
And if you insisted on buying the American product, then you were going to pay extra. And that extra, because, back then we were learning how tariffs work. Tariffs don't go to the person selling the product. Tariffs go to the importing country, and the government gets that money. But you still pay more for that product.
Right.
And what the government is supposed to do with that extra money is they're supposed to go, okay, industry for whom this consumer refused to buy your product because they wanted the American one instead, here's some compensation because you can't compete on your own against the big bad American producer. So like in one case it had to do, I think, with linens. If you wanted to buy sheets, if they were made in Canada, they were a reasonable price. But if you wanted to buy American-made sheets, you paid a lot more because there were tariffs placed on them, which increased their cost. The more I thought about that model, the more I started wondering if it was even serving its intended purpose. Because if the government is going to keep giving me, the Canadian linen producer, money to stay afloat, where's my motivation to make a better product?
Right.
I should be trying to make a better product than the Americans can,
Right.
so the Canadians will buy my shit instead without there being any tariffs.
Right.
But, no. Instead, we've got this protectionist structure that props up industries that on their own wouldn't survive.
Well, I guess the question is does that industry actually receive money for those tariffs?
They're supposed to.
Right.
That is the whole point of the tariffs.
It would be interesting to talk to an economist to actually see, because it's one thing to talk and understand how a tariff operates from our wallet's perspective.
Yes.
But how does it work in the back door? Once the money is here and,
well, there you go, listeners. There's your homework.
Oh, interesting.
Look up, listeners, there's your homework. Look up what tariffs are supposed to be used for when they're collected.
I don't, from my perspective, like I share the same perspective as you, is that I don't see them as being an effective tool, but we also just both sat here and said that we don't really understand how they work. So maybe they work great.
No.
Maybe they're wonderful.
And I kind of blame the government for that because, I've always felt that if the population at large, regardless of whether they're for or against a thing, but especially against, if they don't actually even understand how that thing is working or was even intended to work in the first place, which is why it got created, then government's not doing a very good job. In the same way that I don't believe the government did a very good job selling the idea of the carbon tax.
Right.
Because had they done a good job, no one would be fucking complaining about it.
Right.
Well, except for the people who own 3 fuck-off F-350 pickup trucks.
Right.
They'd be the only ones complaining. But the average consumer, especially the family who only has one vehicle, and it's a reasonable, practical vehicle, they're making out like bandits in that system.
Sure.
But it got sold so poorly, and no one could even see what was being done with the money collected, aside from the fact that we were supposedly getting most, if not all of it back. No one could see what the point was of the money that is collected who who besides the consumer that's getting a rebate is benefiting from it? Is any of that money going to fund renewable projects? Show us. Show us the projects getting funded with this money.
Right.
Oh, you can't? Well, then motherfucker, we doing it.
Right.
So, yeah.
No, and that's a good
governments
point.
don't do a very good job
No.
explaining how they do what they do and why.
And like I said when I started, is that I did know why. I was taught in grade 8 or grade 9 why these interprovincial
Barriers.
trade limitations
Yeah,
exist.
right. But you
When
can't
I was
remember.
fucking 13 or 14
Right, you
years
didn't give
old,
a
like
shit.
that's not right.
Went in one ear out the other.
Yeah, of course. It 100% was. Means I did know. So it's my own fault, is how that nipple gets twisted.
Now,
Right?
in CBC's defense, there is a little kind of a mini program that one of their journalists does at least once a week called About That, where he just focuses on one topic and he kind of tries to open up the box and let you see what's going on. That would be a good topic to tackle because it's relevant, it's topical, it's current, and I doubt anyone, on average, could explain why trade barriers that
Right.
do exist between provinces, or even what they are.
Yeah, no, that's a good point because they're not only are they relevant, but they're also changing. So again, if you're for or against, if you're against it, you got to know what you're against.
That's right.
Same thing if you're for, you got to understand what it is. That's interesting. Anyway, comrade, what do you have planned?
Well, what I have been excited to talk about is how much is changing in the world of AI lately.
Uh-huh.
Like, holy smokes. Have you been following anything at all? In terms of how...
Just the cheap Chinese one.
Right.
Ones, plural.
Yeah.
The DeepSeek and the...
Yeah, DeepSeek
And the whatever.
yeah.
What the hell?
It's not even the one that got my notice either. There are specific YouTube channels that I monitor on a regular basis, and I'm always kind of just staying on top of new tools that have been introduced, existing tools that have features they didn't have before, and just slowly watching, or not slowly, rapidly watching the evolution of what each of the different big players on the scene, Perplexity, Google, Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, OpenAI's ChatGPT, Claude by Anthropic, and a few others. And these sort of tools that have kind of been around for a little while, but nobody really paid much attention to them, suddenly came into my radar, and I started playing with some of them, and I was like, holy crap. So the one that I wanted to focus on tonight is a product made by Google, and it's called Notebook LM. What I found really fascinating about this tool is, unlike most large language models, whether they be Copilot or ChatGPT, Claude, whatever, they may do a good job of explaining a thing, but they don't do a perfect job of explaining a thing or even summarizing a thing. Because by the very nature of how they work, they are not fact-based machines.
Right.
They do not validate themselves unless they are utilizing what they find on the web. And even then, they're only using what they find on the web unless you specifically say, use the web only. They're only using what they find on the web to fill gaps in their own, and it's not even the right terminology, but we'll just say awareness, for lack of a better word. Okay? So if I'm asking ChatGPT, for example, to tell me what's the deal on how should corporations be preparing their employees for the reality that is more and more people are using AI to help do their jobs. Some of the information that I'm going to be presented is valid. Some of it is more or less valid, and some of it will be hallucination and be not quite right.
Okay, so before you continue, I'm struggling with your use of the words valid and right. By
Factual.
okay,
Yes.
okay. So in your scenario,
Yep.
if they pull stuff off the web, then it is factual? Because that's the example that you gave.
Well, that is a good point. Sometimes what an AI might find on the web might not be 100% factual, but it might also be factual. It depends what source it uses, or how many sources it uses, or
And then
whether it
corroborates
even
the information.
or whether it
Right.
even vets the information
Right.
by looking at 5 different sources, seeing if they all say the same thing.
Right.
And if they do identically, then it must be pretty close to being factual.
Okay. All right. So yes. Okay. So then in the second phase, where is it? Because you presented 3 phases,
Mhm.
right? The second phase is mostly valid.
Yeah.
What data is that? Where does that exist?
Left to its own devices, where there is no additional information being provided by outside sources, the answer is only coming from the model itself, isolated from the rest of the world. The model is not answering your prompt with a factual answer that has been validated.
Right.
It is trying to build an answer predictively, one word at a time, in an effort to assist you as best as it can. Now, if the thing you are asking about is fully explained in its training data, you have nothing to worry about.
Okay.
Because it is very good at recognizing the patterns in your prompt and matching those patterns against patterns
library.
it recognizes from its own library,
Yeah.
and it just regurgitates in its own way the information you have asked for.
Okay. So all right. Okay. So now in third phase is more we're living in a generative sort of AI kind of space,
Yes.
where it is making assumptions and filling gaps based on what it thinks it should be.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So
Never forget it's a predictive auto response machine.
right.
And the
Right.
answer you get is its best guess at the highest probabilities of what words should come after each other based on the context of the conversation. Which is why garbage in, garbage out. If you ask a question with a vague prompt, expect a vague answer that
Right.
might be wrong or partly incomplete. If you ask a question with a long, context-driven, almost like you're trying to talk to a autistic teenager, hey, I know you know stuff, but here's what I want, here's how I want it, here's how I want you to go about giving me what I want, and I don't want you to do it like this, I want you to do it like this, and don't pay, no, never mind this aspect of it, just give me this. You'll get a much better answer. In the same way, like one of the analogies that I've heard other people, the best one that I've heard yet is, imagine you have a brand new out of school coworker who is like, they have got a photographic memory, they were best in class, they expose themselves to everything under the sun in their topic, of study, but they don't know shit about the real world. They are completely inexperienced at actually getting anything done. So if you ask them to do something, you're probably not going to be happy with the result unless you explain in fine detail, here's how we do things. So since you've got all this knowledge in your head, here's what I want you to do with that knowledge to help us get a task completed or get a question answered.
Yeah. Okay.
It may be an analogy that falls down after a while, but it's a pretty good.
No, at a high level, that's pretty
Yeah,
good.
at a high level, it's pretty good. But the whole point of this conversation, you can never completely do away with a hallucination in the answer. There is always a chance it's going to creep in, and you won't even know it unless you're checking the answers that you get.
Right.
Because even if ChatGPT is allowed to use the web to help answer the question, what are the fucking sources? Which ones did it use? Which ones did it ignore? Did it ignore the right ones? Did it use the right ones? Does that help reduce hallucinations? Yes, but because it only understands the pattern of language based on the data it was trained on, in addition to what it found online, there is still an opportunity for mistakes and misinterpretations.
Sure.
Until now. Google thought, you know what? Here's the thing. Sometimes the human knows what sources exist that contain the information. They just don't have the fucking time to analyze it.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you've got sources of data on a topic, and you've got lots of them, and they're high quality sources, you could give them to an AI and say, never mind what's out there, never mind what you think you know about this topic, which again, kind of a bad analogy, but we'll run with it for now. Here are the sources I want you to focus on. Got it? You see them? See what's in them? Great. Now, let me ask you a question. What's the deal on this? Summarize that. What's the overarching message in all of that content? Another thing that would be really good for is when the content is just massive.
Sure.
There's a lot of it, and it contains a lot of juicy, useful information, but again, you don't have the time to go sifting through it to find the nuggets.
Yeah. You just think about, like,
So,
law. Like law.
yeah, oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, so imagine being able to give as little or as much focused content on a topic to an AI tool and say, that's all I want you to use to answer any questions that I have.
Right.
How powerful that would be, especially when the sources can be documents in the form of PDFs, audio, spoken audio, YouTube videos that have transcriptions built in of what's being said in the video, web pages, entire web pages. Unfortunately, it can't follow any of the links on that web page, but if the information you want assembled as part of the source material is on 6 different web pages, then you just use those 6 different URLs. And it'll take all the text that's on those pages and add them to the repository. And I thought, wow, that's, in very specific situations, that's really fucking awesome, because you could not only use that kind of a tool to summarize the vast amount of information or ask questions about the vast amount of information that you have assembled, but you can also use it to see if there's anything missing. And the more I thought about this, the more I thought, how can I sell the use of this tool to some of the people that I work with? Because I know I can find a practical use for this. And I finally did find something, and when I showed it to them, they were just like, what the hell? So I called a couple of safety analysts into my classroom. And I said, okay, guys, so I'm going to show a tool to you just so that you see that there's another tool that might help you to do certain aspects of your job. And what I thought would be interesting to try as a use case for this tool is I've uploaded the entire OHS Act for Alberta. And I've uploaded some very well done YouTube videos about forklift safety. And I've uploaded every fucking policy document you guys have in your repository that has anything to do with forklift safety. And there are a lot of them. So they're kind of looking at me and they're a little bit nervous because they don't see right away where I'm going with this. And I said, so do you sort of understand what I'm talking about here in terms of my source content? And they're like, yep. And I said, okay, now let's just ask it some questions. And they're like, you mean like questions like, is there any crosstalk or repetitiveness between these policy documents that deal with forklift use? And I go, yeah, that would be a good one. So sure enough, we did that. And yep, it identified everything that was talked about in at least 2 different documents. Mm-hmm. And in every case, not only identified what the topic was, but how many times it got discussed in the different documents. Then I said, okay, so we agree that this content is kind of being diluted because it's talked about in too many different places. Would you be able to consolidate all of the information from those 10 documents, from those 10 policies, into one new overarching policy? Yes. Do it. Mm-hmm. Took 10 documents averaging 2 to 5 pages of text each and consolidated it into one 4-page document. We also asked it how readable the documents were. In other words, what is the grade level, the reading level of the verbiage used in the documents? For example, would somebody with a grade 8 education be able to understand what the documents were trying to say? No. Here's some problem terminology, etc., that might confuse someone with a lower reading level. So we said, all right, consolidate those documents into one with a reading level that a grade 9 graduate would be able to read it and totally understand what was being said. And it did it. Mm-hmm. And so that was fucking fascinating.
That's interesting.
And it was just one use case for this tool. And I thought, in very specific circumstances, this tool will be very valuable to people trying to get the gist of what big, large collections of existing documentation are trying to say.
Right.
Without you having to read the whole goddamn thing.
All I can think about is the terms of service for an Apple, right? You toss that in there and be like, make it make sense.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
Distill this down to the parts that I would care about as a regular user of this product.
Who doesn't speak legally.
Yeah. Or another use case that was shown to me, it had to do with, imagine you were a follower of a particular content producer on YouTube or on a blog or whatever, where the content is in text format, and you just haven't had time to keep up. So you're like, okay, so what was this episode about?
Right.
Distill it for me. What did he talk about? Well, he talked about this, that, and the other thing. Oh, okay. Next, what about that one? Oh, he talked about this, that, and the other. Oh, okay. That sounds like one that I want to listen to. Or better, someone is a content producer and over the course of a year produce like 250 episodes on the topic of AI, and you don't have time to listen to 250 episodes, so you load the links for them all up into Notebook LM and go, give me a fucking 50-page or, you know, a 20-page summary of the most interesting things that they talked about in those 250 episodes. Done.
Yep.
So after I had written an article that I was going to post in Teams at work to try to interest people in using this tool, and I found a couple of YouTube videos that also, in very general terms, described what this tool could be used for. I found another feature in this tool that I thought, no, this can't be. It's a fucking podcast generator. And the podcast generator takes the content and these two, a male and a female voice, riff on the content.
How funny.
So I thought, well, this'll be funny. Let's upload my whole spiel on the technology and a couple of YouTube videos on it and let it riff on that and see what it sounds like.
Interesting.
So here's what it came up with. I'm not going to play the whole thing because it's like goddamn 12 minutes long, but...
All right, so have you ever felt like you're just drowning in information?
Hey.
Piled up notes scattered everywhere. All those YouTube videos you told yourself you'd get back to.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Right. What if there was like this AI that could just make sense of it all? But it would only use your stuff.
Oh, wow.
No more of those like generic AI hallucinations.
Yeah.
You know, just pure gold from like your own personal knowledge base.
Right.
And that is exactly what we are diving into today.
Yeah, Google.
Google's Notebook LM.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like having like a superpowered research assistant who's
Yeah.
already read like everything you have and can instantly pull out like the most relevant insights.
Sounds
I
like
love that
robot
analogy.
sucking its
Yeah.
own dick.
And the best part is,
Like
I know, right?
Notebook LM is completely free.
Wow.
You feed it your sources.
And
Okay.
that's kind of what I thought about it when I put it together. I was like, let's make the thing talk about itself,
Right.
and it did, because of
Right.
course it would, right?
Right.
And then what I did was I did the same thing. I wonder what it would make of one of our podcasts, because YouTube automatically transcribes everything that we say in our own podcasts. So I thought, well, I wonder what it would make of it. And as I was listening to it riff on our podcast, I realized, oh shit, it has no idea who we are. So instead of saying Carl said, Adam said, it just said person one said, person two said,
Right.
because we never said who we were.
Okay.
We used to,
Right.
but in this last episode, we never did. But it was still hilarious to listen for a couple of minutes anyway.
All right, so welcome to another deep dive. And today we are going to tackle this YouTube show called Talkbots. You sent in episode 46, and yeah, just a heads up, these guys cover a lot.
Yeah, it's a wild ride. They're all over the place.
Electric vehicles.
U.S. politics.
And even like a really bizarre medical story. It's like they just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks.
And their conversational style is something else. It's like they're not even trying to have a coherent conversation. They're just riffing off each other and interrupting constantly.
Yeah, so our mission today is to kind of dissect not just what they're saying, but also like their personalities, their opinions, and their unique conversational style.
We're basically doing a critical review, but with a sense of humor, because honestly, you got to laugh at some of the stuff they come up with.
Exactly. All right, so let's jump right in. They start off talking about electric vehicles, and Talkbot host one is like super excited about this Tesla Model Y that he test drove with full self-driving.
Oh yeah, he's totally geeking out. He's like, I died and was reborn in an alternate universe.
Like he's never experienced anything like it.
And he keeps name dropping all these like EV specific terms, like one pedal driving.
Which is like where you barely use the brake pedal.
Yeah, it's a weird thing.
Isn't that
But it
like
makes sense when you get
nuts?
used to it.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Wow.
And I was just
That's
like,
super uncomfortable.
I know, right? And as it continues, like it gets to a point where they actually start criticizing some of the stuff that I say, because I was like, he's like too, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like he's not objective enough. He's too,
Oh my god.
and I'm just like, oh my god, this is fantastic.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things that I noticed, because I knew everything that we had said during that episode, because when I made this, it had only gone live, and I'd only finished editing it maybe a couple days before, which is why I thought, hey, I wonder what it would do if I just gave it the YouTube link for one of our episodes. What would it make of it? Because although Notebook LLM's shtick is to only deal with the content that it's been given in giving you your answer, the podcast seems to riff above and beyond the content that it's been provided.
It must. 'Cause
Yes.
It knows what objective and subjective information is.
Yes. And what I started noticing was it would say things that were actually in the content, say more things that were in the content, more things that were in the content, and then it would offer analogies and insights and extra information using words we never fucking said, not uttered once.
And is it all in response to what we've said?
Yes.
Or does it add its own to
Flavor. It's just
flavor.
riffing.
It's just flavor.
Yeah, it's just
Okay.
riffing.
Okay.
But riffing in a very conversational way.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's not like a boring, the guy from Ferris Bueller's
Sure.
class,
Yeah.
today no, it's
Funny enough,
got,
he was talking about tariffs in that scene.
it's got, yeah, no kidding. Yeah, it's got personality, it's got, and so I started experimenting. I made,
Fucking narcissist in you.
I made
just
it.
do
Well,
for all
no,
of our
because
own
I
shit.
wanted to see. One of the things that I have always found the most challenging aspect of my job is making shit interesting.
Sure.
And so I thought, okay, let's take some of the driest fucking subjects that I can think of. Cybersecurity. I had a wonderful point-driven cybersecurity plan that I use to riff on in front of a class who wants to learn about cybersecurity. And I just fed that into the thing and let the two robots riff on it. It was fucking incredible. And I'm like, all right, well, obviously that wasn't boring enough. Let's try multi-factor authentication. I found a really good article that just got published recently on MFA, and then I found another really good YouTube video where they talked about the latest discoveries in MFA and why you want to do it this way and not that way, and loaded it up and said, all right, well, fucking riff on that, you sons of bitches. And it was just like, fucking...
All right, so today we're really diving deep into online security.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, that extra step that we're all supposed to be taking multi-factor authentication?
Right.
Does it, really live up to all the hype?
Yeah.
We've got this great blog post from Agility Cyber.
Right.
Is MFA enough? Not really, here's why. And we've also got this briefing document kind of summarizing some of its key points. Now we're all used to, getting that extra code on our phones, or you've got to tap your security key.
Yeah.
But have you ever stopped to think about how MFA itself could actually be turned against you?
See what I mean? The topic is drier than a popcorn fart, and these two motherfuckers literally turn it into something interesting.
So, could they, like this example, without any tinkering as it is,
Yeah.
could that replace the document that you created? Does it have the same?
Yeah.
It has the same information,
Pretty much.
and it's just presented in such a better way.
Yeah.
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 That's fucking ridiculous.
Like,
Yeah, that's really neat.
and I'm listening to this stuff and I'm thinking, I guess I may as well just fucking quit now.
Right.
Like, my services are no longer required. And
Well,
this is just phase one.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a matter of time. And in fact, if you choose an alternate Google tool, which doesn't have all of the aspects that Notebook LM has, because Notebook LM is trying to be an all-in-one, give me your content and ask me whatever you need to know about it. You need to study it, I'll make you a study guide. You need a summary, I'll give you a summary. You need a fucking test made from it, I'll make you a test. You want me to fucking riff on it, I'll riff on it. Here you go, here's a riff, 12 minutes, what do you think? Fucking good enough? No? Oh, you want me to try again? Okay. Oh, you've got special instructions? You want me to focus on this but not that? Tell me what to fucking do and I'll do it. And I've had hits and misses in that regard, but there is an alternative tool that does nothing but take content and turn it into a podcast where you can actually say, no, not those voices, these voices. I want these 3 voices riffing on it. I want a solo voice riffing on it and no one else. But not that guy, this guy. I want the tone of the conversation to be a little more serious and professional. Or I want to just go fucking balls ass fucking Cheech and Chong crazy and ramp up the language. And it does it. It'll do it. And this is just like step 1. Like if we were to reconvene in a year,
Who knows? That's
like,
the only.
who the fuck knows what
Who
it'll
knows?
be able to do.
No.
So yeah, that's what I've been, one of the rabbit holes that I've gone down in the last month and a half. Like it's just blowing my mind. It's just blowing my mind. Yeah. It's a fucking game changer as far as I'm concerned. And what's interesting about it is that they're so, like, I mean, pretty much everybody knows ChatGPT. But if you ask people, hey, Notebook LM, eh? And they're like, what? Like, nobody even knows about this yet. But speaking of ChatGPT...
Hold on.
Yeah.
Yeah, just hold on.
Yeah.
I'm processing information.
All right. Adam's doing a Notebook LM, human style.
So slow. And my source data is bad.
Corrupted.
Yeah, it's filled with fart jokes.
Filled with what? Fart jokes?
Fart jokes.
Of course.
So you said an interesting thing, which is like, and I know you're being facetious when you said it,
Yeah.
but you also weren't.
Right.
Which is, like, what's even the point of showing up? Like, why even go to work because this thing is doing my job?
Well, it has the capability to do my job.
But
Or if nothing else, it has the capability of generating very interesting content.
Right.
Yes.
And that's my point, is that it still
Which
needs
is the hardest thing to do.
Right. Or is it?
I think it is. I really struggle sometimes
Sure.
making
Sure.
shit interesting.
Okay, but that's no longer your job. You still
Right.
need to show up.
Yeah.
You're just the curator of
Yeah.
what's important.
Right.
Which
For
is
now.
for
For now.
no, but you're right for now, but you will always, I think, like when you're talking about 2FA, okay, that's a pretty broad scope that's applicable to all things.
Mhm.
But when we're talking about a business policy on forklift operation,
Mhm.
that isn't, like, granted that's not your role, but that will be that guy's role.
Yeah.
Will always exist
Yeah.
because he's a representative of the business and knows what they do and do not need. So he doesn't have to. He no longer has to worry about making the content any good. He just has to make it like any good from a consumption perspective.
Mm-hmm.
He just has to, or she has to, work on making the strongest data,
Yes.
the strongest information
Yes.
possible.
Just like when you're training an AI, they wanted to use the best quality data to train the model.
Right, of course. Now, that sucks for guys like you and I who think that we're funny, because now, maybe who gives a shit anymore? It's sort of irrelevant, because now you got...
Well, no,
Maybe you got...
no, because as human sounding as that was, they couldn't tell a joke if their life depended on it to keep things light. They're throwing little anecdotes in there, but they're very light anecdotes. They're not heavy-duty anecdotes.
But
That's
when we're
the one
talking
thing I
about...
noticed.
But when we're talking
Like I
about...
said, this is step one.
Sure, right.
This is the toddler version,
Right.
if it's even that advanced. But we'll call it the toddler version because I'm sure they worked on this. The infant version probably never made it out of the lab. The toddler version is the version we get to play with for a while. But the difference between what they can riff and what I can riff is I can modify what I'm saying to suit the people that are sitting in front of me.
Agreed. But you are doing something different than what that is.
Yes.
You are presenting to 12 people. That's presenting to
The world.
yeah,
Yeah.
millions of people.
Yeah.
Right? Potentially.
Yes.
Or thousands in your business.
Right.
You no longer have to have people go to your training lab to learn about 2FA. They go to SharePoint and they listen to the 12-minute podcast. You and your stupid jokes are no longer required.
No.
But when you're teaching Excel, for the time being,
Yeah.
or whatever the fuck it is, you're teaching 12 people, and your ability to communicate, entertain people is required. But yeah, there's a lot of really horribly boring, incredibly important information that exists.
Yes.
That
This has the ability to transform into something to make you care to pay attention.
like interprovincial tariffs,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, holy fuck, no one wants to, but people would listen to an entertaining...
But you bring up a good point. This could revolutionize the entire education system.
Yeah, it absolutely could, because none of that content is great, but it's all incredibly important.
And think of all the teachers you had in high school and the difference between the ones that made you want to stab your eyes out with a fucking pencil and the ones that actually entertained you and kept you engaged.
Right.
With enough evolution of entertainment capability. This thing could fucking teach anything. Well,
Well, that's because now it can teach anything.
yeah.
Anything
Now- now
that
do
has
it.
source data.
Do it now.
But
Make
do
it do
it
it better
engaging.
than anyone could.
Yeah.
Now, just make it do it and better than anyone. Like, make me care about X. Make me understand it and care. Keep me interested in this topic till you stop talking. And
There-
for what it's worth,
Yeah.
one of the spiels that I got it to riff on, when it got to about the 12-minute mark, it started getting long in the tooth. And it registered in my brain as I was listening. 'Cause I was listening, I was paying attention. And I'm like, yep, that's good. Yep, that's good. Yep, that's good. Yep, that's good. Yep. What the fuck was that? What? Oh, okay. That's not really interesting anymore, or that's not really important.
Right.
And
So
then I
they-
realized that it was now starting to fill air. It didn't realize that it didn't need to say anymore. And so what I did was I already had the whole file. Like, once it makes the podcast, you can download it as an audio file and then do whatever the fuck you want with it. So what I did was I loaded it up in Camtasia, which is an editor, and I just chopped out. As soon as it got boring, I cut it off. Like, it got to a very natural, what could have been the last sentence of the podcast, but not perfectly closed it. Found the last closing statement from it at the very end,
Right.
cut everything else in between out, and turned it from like something like an 18-minute podcast to a 10-minute podcast, and it was fucking perfect.
Right.
It was perfect. And then I posted it on YouTube. And I was just like, wow, man. If this is, this is attempt number 1 with no modifications to the instructions to say, no, not like that, like this, and I didn't have the ability to change the voices. Unfortunately, in this version of the podcast generator, you can't make any modifications to the voice. You're stuck with the man and the woman, and they always sound the same. But it's just a
But
matter
that's
of time.
aesthetics, really.
And it's just a matter of time before they go, oh, here's some more voices.
Yeah, of course.
Pick the ones you want before we generate the audio. And it takes it somewhere in the neighborhood of like 2 minutes to generate that. It's
Now, granted, we only listened to 30, 45 seconds of it. Because I'm thinking about, like, the quality of delivery.
Mhm.
Like, obviously, the summarization of a horribly boring topic
Mhm.
into 8, 12 minutes is fantastic. Making it entertaining and something you're willing to listen to for 12 minutes is vitally important, because 12 minutes is still a really long time if
Yep.
the content sucks.
Yeah.
And we were talking about jokes or making it entertaining, but from those 30 to 45 seconds, their banter seems to be adequate to keep you engaged. Like, you don't need them to tell you jokes.
No.
Like, the banter is
The conversational
like, if it was
style is light and
it's light enough that
Yeah.
you are, yeah. Now, if it was a solo podcast, or if you chose solo, it would be probably a kick to the cock. It would probably be
in
terrible,
comparison,
right?
sure. Yeah.
But with the two people and just the back and forth and the well-placed mm-hms and yas, make it so you can listen to it.
Yep.
You don't have to laugh at it for it to be interesting. And,
Right.
And that's really interesting.
Mhm.
Because there are topics that I despise, as we all do,
Mhm.
that I could see myself going home now and tossing in there and spending the 8 minutes listening to it.
And the best part is that if there are 4 preeminent voices that exist in the world on a topic, and they each have their own unique contribution on that topic, and you load them up as sources, and then you just put that in Notebook LM and go, all right, guys, riff away. You're going to get the best of all 4 points of view.
Now, will it cite the sources in the podcast?
Yes,
Yeah.
if it feels that's necessary, because you remember when
Host
when
1,
I
host 2? Oh,
when,
sorry, go ahead.
No, when I was playing the one about the MFA,
Yeah,
it mentioned
It did.
one of the articles that it was
did.
using as a source.
it did.
It did. So yes, it may not keep referring to it, but it will at least. It seems to want to mention it at least once.
It would be interesting.
And if the sources are offering opposing points of view, you would think that it would especially mention them when it is saying, okay, so, but this guy in this article said,
Right. Right.
oh, well, that's interesting because what this guy in this article said, like, my just big toe is dipped in this water. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I haven't even begun to see just how good this thing is at, making a
Making
talk
horrible
show
things.
out of
Yeah.
disparate perspectives on things. That's the part that interests me the most.
See, the part that interests me is that aspect tied into horrible content.
Yeah.
It's just boring,
Yeah.
awful shit.
Yeah.
And I want you to make it short, sweet,
Understandable
and understandable.
and engaging.
And something that's worth listening to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that in itself is incredibly powerful.
Yep.
And it was kismet to start the conversation of the podcast off about tariffs. Because
Right.
my God, fucking terrible.
I know.
Terrible.
Yeah.
But I could go home tonight and
Pull up a few videos or
like
or
nothing.
documents.
Like nothing. Yeah, I could go to the government website and
Load
find
them
out-
up. Yep.
Yeah, and make me a podcast. And they, oh, okay, I get it.
Except I wouldn't. I mean, you could just load up the government documents that explain what the tariffs are and why they exist and how they work. But I don't know if I would be satisfied with it just riffing on the facts. I would still want preeminent, at least one preeminent perspective on that topic by someone who knows it well, speaking on it as another source
Yeah,
that they can
Yeah.
can then riff on together.
right.
You know what I mean? Or even better, two videos or documents or articles or blog posts that don't even necessarily agree with each other. One is pro tariffs, one is anti tariffs. Here's the document on what tariffs are,
Right.
and what exists and why. Here's the pro tariff argument. Here's the anti tariff argument. There you go.
Yeah.
Make it happen.
Right.
Another use case that I wanted to test it on, because one of the things that I find about my brainstorming technique is it's not linear. If I want to write about something, I'm never thinking about the beginning and then the middle and then the end. The ideas are popping in that belong all the way through the whole spiel, and I find it very comfortable and very fun to just riff on the topic myself, and the statements that are coming out of my mouth are all over the fucking place on the topic. So that's what I did. I started riffing on things, captured it as a voice recording, loaded it up into Notebook LM, and had it summarize all the things that I said, but in a logical progression. And it did. And I was like, holy shit.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
yet another use for the tool.
Right.
Podcast, not even necessary. We're just, let's take audio content that is just brainstorming,
Just vomit.
just vomit and
Yeah.
make sense of it.
Right.
And it could.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh man. Like, fuck. Imagine a university student that has to write an essay on a topic and they actually know what they want to say, but they just don't want to have to try to organize
The
it in
amount
their
of time
head
to say
before
it
they
from
fucking
formatting.
regurgitate it. They just want to get it out of their brain, which is the best thing you can do. The worst place to keep an idea is in your head, and then just keep up and this blah, 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 blah. Eating dinner. Oh, hang on. And blah, 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 and you just keep, vomiting out the information so that you don't forget any of the things that you wanted to say, and it doesn't matter what order they're in. And then when you figure you're done, you just take that recording, you fucking upload it into Notebook LM and say, there, make something of this.
Yeah. Interesting.
Make something of this. But don't make anything up. Just go by only what I said. That's it. Yeah, man. Like, fucking crazy. And that's just one of the 10 or 15 tools that I've been exposed to in the last 2 months that are just making me go, what the fuck? Oh my God. Yeah, like I just discovered today how they made DeepSeek. Like they literally took the base model, a base model like the one that ChatGPT is based on, and they distilled it into something even more efficient and compact. Using a process that the whole world that is AI already knew existed. They just never bothered to try it. And the Chinese were like, hey, I wonder what would happen if we took this whole fucking model and tried to distill it into something smaller. 2 AIs, one the master, one the student. Hey, student, make this even easier, less computationally intensive, less storage requirement, but has the same capabilities as the big thing.
Yeah. You just
And they
use
did it.
You just use yourself. To
And they
make
did
yourself
it.
better.
Yeah.
Interesting.
They used an AI to make the AI more efficient, more cost effective. And meanwhile, everybody else is looking at each other like, you knew about that, right? Yeah, we knew we could do that. Why the fuck didn't we do that? Because Chinese, man, they'll fucking do everything. They'll do all the shit. Because that's what they're all about. That's what they're about. They're about getting it done better, faster, cheaper, stronger. That's their shtick. So they did. And then people started freaking out because they went, well, we can't use the Chinese version because,
Reasons.
China,
Yeah.
right? Reasons. And now it's available. There's copies of it because it is open source, running on American and Canadian hosts and European host servers. So it's like, go ahead, use it. You don't need to use the Chinese one if you don't want to.
How large is the model?
I forget exactly how big it is, but it's like fucking. Not only is it not very big, you could make your own copy of it. You could do it yourself. It would cost a few $1,000s worth of hardware to make your own version of it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And in fact, I think what somebody said they were going to try to do next is say, well, let's not just focus on one base model and distill it into something smaller and more compact. let's take their base model, 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 distill them down, and then say, now take those distillations and distill it even
Into
further
one.
into
Yeah.
one. That is the best of all of them. And they're like, yeah, we'll get back to you tomorrow
Yeah.
when we're done. Oh my God. Things are moving so fast. Like the briefing that I was giving everybody, 3 months ago, it's fucking obsolete.
Yeah, it's definitely
It's
old.
completely obsolete. Yeah. But now the battle that I'm having to deal with is, oh, Carl, oh, it scares me though. It scares me. It's AI. Oh, it's scary. I don't know. I don't know if I want to use it. And I'm just like, okay, so, but I realize it's going to take a lot to get through because, misinformation being what it is, and all the tinfoil wearing people are like, oh, this is Skynet. This is the beginning of Skynet. And I'm just like, okay.
You know
just
what you do is you
stop.
make that doily of a human being a fucking 8-minute podcast of why it's a good idea.
Yeah.
And there you go.
Yeah.
Listen to this.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
how'd you hire those people?
The most interesting thing that I did in the last month, you know about the ChatGPT app, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The advanced voice mode.
No, I don't know what that.
Okay, so built into the app, if you press on the little waveform thingy down at the bottom right, it listens to whatever you're saying, and if you activate the camera, it's also paying attention to whatever your camera can see.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I actually have a practical use case for this. I'm in the grocery store, and I'm looking at this Dutch licorice on the shelf, and I can't read a word of it. I have no idea what I'm looking at. I mean, I know it's licorice, but that's all I know, because there's practically no English on the packaging at all, save for the sticker they threw on there for the nutritional information. Whipped it out, turned it on, activated the camera, pointed it at the first bag of licorice and said, "You know what this is?" "Yes, this is a blah 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 brand of licorice from the Netherlands." "Great. What's the difference between this one and that one?" "Oh, the one on the right, or the one on the left in the green package, is the salty kind of licorice. The one on the right in the red package is the sweet kind of licorice." I'm like, "Great, thanks very much. Goodbye." It's just like, if I hadn't had that tool, I wouldn't have had a clue.
Right.
The product would still be on the shelf because I wouldn't have had any idea what they were. And I was just like, fuck.
Well, the important question is, Carl, did you take the green bag or the red bag?
I took the red bag.
You're a fucking pussy. You're a fucking doily of a human being.
Whatever. Whatever.
Salted licorice is the only way to go.
No, I don't like it.
Well, you're wrong.
I don't like it. Oh,
Make me a
maybe
podcast.
I am wrong.
Make
but
me a podcast about that.
there
Fuck
you go. Yeah, fuck it. That'll be the boringest fucking podcast ever.
Carl's
Hey,
a pussy.
today we're doing a deep dive on salty versus sweet licorice. Oh, yeah, that sounds fucking super exciting. Can I just stab myself to death right now?
No, you're a robot. You're a non-corporeal being.
Oh, fuck. Anyway, yeah. So that's kind of been my excitement for the last while.
That's interesting.
Yeah. But oh my God, was I ever laughing when I listened to the podcast about our podcast.
Oh
I
my
was just like,
god,
holy
that is
fuck.
rough.
That is so funny.
It is funny. It is
Oh.
funny. It is funny. I might listen to our podcasts that way. Like I wouldn't listen to I wouldn't listen back to this, but I might listen to Yahoo and the Buzz.
Well, if you're going to do it, we should at least do the tool the favor of identifying who we are so that they can
Right.
refer to us as
Host
opposed to
wonder, host.
podcast host number 1, Carl, and
Adam.
podcast host number 2.
As Adam, I'm podcast host number 2 apparently.
Oh, God.
There we go.
Of Talkbots. Episode,
47?
yeah,
Yeah.
I believe so.
Yeah.
I believe so.
Oh God.
No, I didn't write down the number. Oh, well, that was dumb. So that's a show.
Yeah. Well, it's a show. Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
Boop. Beep. For boop doot.
I'm just going to let it go for a few more seconds for that, fade out while we're no longer talking about stuff.
Right. Got it.